This guy kind of asked a random question, analyze Enoch and the controversy of him being married to a Jewish woman, doing JQ bits on his radio show for about a year before he got doxxed. Somehow he kept getting bigger without ever explaining why him and her were doing the racist and anti-Semitic edgelord meme shit on his show at Daily Poke. Yeah, the title is Mocking the Holocaust. He says he wants to hear my take on what happened or didn't. Well, you've heard, Destiny's talked about it. Honest analysis from a normal person. Well, I appreciate that compliment. I'm not super familiar with, the drama with Enoch. I only read, I think there was an article in the Atlantic or some such paper that basically talked about it. And while, those magazines lie about shit just to make an interesting article, I'm sure at least a bunch of it is true. And the article kind of talked about this. It said, he was always into dissident politics, kind of. First it was being a libertarian. And being a libertarian, it's dissident in a different way. It's saying, we don't need a police force. We could form our own police force, and kind of brainstorming ways that this would work. And as far as I understand, he started off as libertarian-ish. And then, many of these people do, they start becoming, I don't want to say racist, but racial. They move in a racially realist direction, because this is another taboo that's frowned upon in our society. So they find that to be tempting. And then I guess the ultimate target, the ultimate path that you might find yourself on is becoming so-called woke. No, they don't use woke. Becoming based or woke or red-pilled on the JQ. As far as I understand, that's the path he took. But he also just enjoyed, and I'm not saying he doesn't legitimately believe those things, but it seemed like he also enjoyed, you're going to find this surprising, right? It seemed like he also enjoyed trolling people and getting a reaction out of people online, and turning that into a following and getting attention out of that. So it seems like he evolved, and I think he holds these beliefs, so he's genuine in that respect, in a lot of ways, but I would guess that he puts the attention and the trolling and getting a reaction out of people beyond believing in what he's actually saying. Guys like him, Stryker, other guys, and those guys are extremely smart. I would say maybe they're more street smart than book smart, but they're extremely smart in debates. But I think some of the things they say, I believe they prioritize getting a reaction out of people and putting together a simplistic kind of narrative over actually saying what they really believe to be verifiably true. I'll state that again in more simple terms. I think their priorities are getting a rise out of people, in inflaming their followers, stirring up their emotions to get a reaction out of them, which makes them into more loyal listeners, keeps them there, keeps them listening more, and also so getting a reaction out of people and framing it in a way so it's coherent and gets them on a track of, in their case, they put everything around the JQ, right? So they just came out with an article, Mike just came out with an article of the immigrant crisis, what do you call it? The migrant which I think that really started hardcore around 2014. He's basically putting that on Israel. Israel's fighting wars. They're pushing the Arabs out of the Middle East. They're pushing Muslims out of the Middle East. And this is like all orchestrated out of Israel. You know, you look at the numbers. Most of the Muslim immigrant, France is the most heavily Muslim country. They mostly come from Algeria, Morocco, a couple other places, but those are most of them. It happened, nothing to do with Israel. It happened long before Israel even fought some of these local wars. And lately, more of the immigration has come, more of the migrants have come from Syria. Obviously, they've had their civil war, but it's been small compared to those other countries. And even blaming it on Israel that's a stretch. But they would say, oh, Israel is supporting the rebels in the east, the ISIS and Al-Qaeda linked rebels. Now, while that might be true, there's a lot of countries supporting both sides. So this is what I mean, where their priority is creating a narrative where everything is to blame on Israel and the Jews. And the reason why they do that, I feel, is to inflame their followers, to give them a simple narrative and blame it all on one source, one cause, and keep reinforcing that to the same drumbeat to get them moving in the same direction. And it's highly inflammatory, which means others don't do it. So, and the reason why they do this is because they can call everyone else cucks, right? Like, oh, that guy doesn't want to get rid of the Jews. He's a cuck. Like, he's not dealing with the real problem. Like, while Tucker Carlson is as good, he's the best on TV, well, he has to cuck because otherwise the Jews will fucking get rid of him. So they created this catchy narrative that people latch onto because they come to believe this is really true, and that guys like Stryker, Stryker, Mike Enoch, and just the NJP in general are the only guys who have the balls to go near this. So they've created like their own differentiation, like you would do in any other business. They've done this with their analysis. So that's how they keep a loyal following. There's some pitfalls. They've been banned from most apps and payment processors and websites and YouTube. So that's kind of a problem for them, but it also develops loyalty because they're persecuted because of this. So they have a loyal following because of this. But and what comes along with that? You're going to get negative publicity. You're going to generate a lot of enemies and hatred, but you're going to bring your followers along with you. So I think I've kind of described the path that they've taken, but you can just see how Enoch and Stryker have seen the path to take, where they basically make shit up that corresponds to a narrative that they want to tell people, that's going to inflame people, keep them inflamed, but keep them marching with them. And I don't know anything about how much money the guy makes or anything, but I don't think it's insignificant. He's at least paying his bills, if not maybe making a pretty good living just on the recurring revenue from his show. But I think that's his shtick, that's his differentiation, that's his niche in online, far-right politics, political commentary. I'm trying to think what I've left out here. I think I've described them pretty well. Where he'll take any situation, no matter what a white person does, unless they cuck on their fellow white people. But let's say you have a white nationalist. Every white nationalist that's been arrested, they've been set up by the government. It's by a glowy, by an FBI undercover. They've been entrapped. They're all innocent. They were all walking home from choir practice, minding their own business, and they all got stitched up. That's the narrative they say. No matter what a Jewish person is doing, it's always bad. It's always nefarious. This is the whole concept of bagel theory. What's it called? The kosher sandwich is what it's called. You have Jews advocating for Zionism. They're only doing it to benefit Jews. Like, that's the shtick. You have Jews taking the exact opposite position, opposing Zionism, protesting the state of Israel. They want to see the state of Israel dismantled. They're doing exactly the opposite of each other. But it's the same, he would say the exact same thing. They're only doing that to benefit the Jews. And they're doing that as a ploy to, like, drown out real white nationalists, us. So, like, don't listen to them. So basically, everybody is the enemy and trying to subvert you unless you're saying what they're saying. So it's a really clever shtick that they've got going. It develops, it maintains those things that I mentioned, the loyalty, the outrage, etc. And they're extremely good at it. So, like, other people that oppose them, I heard he posted this recently on his Telegram. I don't know if this is recent, if this actually happened recently, but he posted it recently, where a guy calls him to do an interview, and he just fucks with this guy hardcore. Starts talking about Israel, starts talking about Jews, and, like, yeah, he's constantly interrupting the guy and gish-galloping him and not letting him, and being disingenuous, not acting in good faith. But, like, you can't possibly beat, well, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult without some type of control or rules to actually, I don't know, beat him in a discussion, beat him in a debate, because that's how good he is. Like, he's just really good with the shtick. And that's largely my analysis of him. I'm trying to think of other points that I've noticed with him. So I don't know a lot about how he got started or his personal situation, but I feel like I understand his shtick and what he does, etc. You know, like, why would a guy with a Jewish wife start off making fun of the Holocaust? I mean, that's not that surprising to me. Making jokes about the Holocaust, Jews do that. If a guy's married to a Jew, he might do it. As far as moving in the direction of hating Jews, saying they're all traitors, they shouldn't be in our country, that's a different level. And they divorced, right? So how did that happen? I think he evolved on this path, and he even says this. I mean, yeah, he could be lying, but he went from being a dissident to being a more based race realist to being extreme on the JQ, or being woke on the JQ. I don't know the exact expression they use or how they say it, but I enjoy reading their analysis because it's just so crazy. I'm trying to think of more examples. I've explained the high level, but more examples as to how they actually do it. Yeah, I mentioned the so in any situation, I've said they'll always take the side against the Jews. So, like, Stryker does this a lot. So does Enoch. It's basically if someone's the victim in a situation. You see this a lot on Twitter, you know, on the left, on the right. When someone's clearly the victim, say Hamas launching rockets at Israel, you know, you gaslight the victim, or you mock them into saying, you know, they're being babies, like no one's dying, or not that many people are dying. They have the Iron Dome, you know, they can knock the missiles out of the sky. Same thing is done, let's say when Black Lives Matter people, when they burn something down or they beat up some diners, they say, oh, it's not that bad. It's nothing compared to, you know, structural racism. So they'll do that. They'll overreact anytime Israel does something or a Jew does something. Like, comes out with a Netflix special. It's like some nefarious thing that's destroying society and ruining white people. Um, and then they'll do the opposite for, say, the Palestinians or white people, which they see as victims of the Jews. So they'll say, the Palestinians are being genocided. Um, White people and Palestinians are both being destroyed by the Jews. So that's what they do in every situation. So it's very clearly a bad faith worldview that they have created over time and constantly reinforce by doing this with the news, um, through group dynamics, Jews versus others mostly, but also whites versus blacks, but always blaming the Jews are always above it, according to them. I'm trying to think of what else they've said lately and how it relates to their strategy. But I guess I'm kind of drawing a blank. So I guess this will have to suffice for now. But ultimately, it'll be interesting how it plays out. I mean, are they going to rile people so much they come after them and try to eliminate their internet presence? But I mean, they're pretty robust as far as staying on the internet. What would it ultimately turn into? I mean, it's going to remain a fringe thing because it has to, because they're so extreme, and you can't even find them on Google. Their political party thing or whatever. But to stay relevant, they have to constantly inflame people, convince them that they're being genocided. Nefarious groups are out to destroy them, and they have to follow in their footsteps, or at least follow their ideas, or someone that adheres to their ideas. Um, I think that's all I can say right now. But I follow them on Telegram to see their views, which are inflammatory and interesting.